Today, I'm with my guest, Ashley Safranski. She's the VP of Marketing at uConnect. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Caleb. Super glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Maybe kick us off with this, Ashley. Just in a sort of high-level summary, what has been your journey as a marketing leader? Where did it start, and what were some of the key milestones up until today?
Yeah, I can tell you that I definitely didn't think I would be here as a VP of marketing, graduating college, 15 years ago or whatever it was. I actually got my start post-college in higher education. So I worked in enrollment management, really working to recruit new students to a large four-year public institution here in the state of Washington. So I thought, I was going to be in higher ed for a long time. And I think now looking back, there are so many parallels between the job that I have now in marketing, B2B SaaS, and recruiting new students. And I can dig into that more later. But from higher ed, I jumped over to another ed tech company, started in product, was asked to build a marketing team there. And did that for a few years. And I've been at my current company, uConnect, for just under 3 years, and also had the fortune to kind of build a marketing function from scratch here. So it's been a fun journey. And like I said, didn't think I would be here, upon graduation. It's not what I set out to do, but I'm grateful. Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
That's awesome. It's funny how it never starts the way we thought. And then
almost never. And, just to, uConnect, the company that I'm at now, we work in career, we support career services departments in higher ed. And I just say that, that is just something that's so prevalent in that work, is that very few career journeys are super linear. And, it's just cool to just embrace it and just kind of see where it goes.
Is the role and the company that you find yourself out now, is it just sort of, hey, great, it's a job, it's a paycheck, or is there something specific about the mission that uConnect has that has some integration into your background, or what motivates you, what makes you happy? What's the connection there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think having spent so much time, almost 10 years working directly in higher ed and helping others pursue higher education and advancement in their, education and career journeys. I believe in it, right? I think higher ed generally is very much under fire right now. There's in the US, lots of headlines around, is it really worth the investment? And I think that's all, fair. I think it's a fair question that people are asking. And so I believe in it, and it's just really cool to use that higher ed experience that I have in support of career services professionals who's they exist, right, to help these students graduate, persist, graduate, and go on and, start their own career journeys and find meaningful employment post-graduation. So it's a cool kind of full circle moment for me. And I love being able to use my higher ed background in this marketing capacity here at uConnect.
That's great. That's always an ideal situation where it's you can marry a lot for what you do.
Yeah, so, totally.
At uConnect, we all have our own understanding and definitions of the roles and responsibilities of a VP of marketing, but in more of a common sense language, what do you get paid to do there? So they give you a paycheck. What are you responsible for? I'm assuming they pay you.
Yeah. Make sales easier, make buying easier, right? I think I've heard that somewhere, a lot of different people have probably said it, but I think in the most simplest way of looking at it, that's what we're trying to do, is we want to bring people into the sales pipeline who are ready to talk to a salesperson. And that in theory should make, the selling process easier. And it should also make the buying process easier for the prospect too, right? They're more educated, they have a greater understanding of both the problem that we solve for and that they have, and how, the solution fits into that.
Yeah.
So I would say, just at a very high level, that's what I'm paid to do and what our marketing team is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. It's so often marketing and sales have each independently been criticized about doing their own thing in isolation of one another. But the first thing you led with was it's sales enablement. And more than that, making buying easy, because, I think we all believe that marketing's job is to connect people with problems to companies with solutions. And if that's a difficult journey to traverse, we're not really adding much value to the world or to the marketplace. So I like how you put that.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
What's the rip your hair out hardest part about your job right now? Okay.
We're a small team. There are technically three of us in marketing, but one is a BDR. So we have one BDR at uConnect, and they report into marketing, which is really fun. And I think it keeps kind of like the messaging loop really tight with how we want to have, outbound prospecting go.
Right.
In one way, and that's like a whole separate conversation. But so that means that there are two people at our company that are very just only focused on marketing here. So
Yeah.
we're small, and I know I'm not alone in this, but like the thing that's always a struggle, right? Like you always try to do your best with it. It's just like prioritization and the trade-offs, and honestly, like constantly maybe feeling like, man, I'm letting someone down. Hey, we're focusing a lot on generating new sales opportunities for our sales team, but maybe that means like our expansion efforts. Like there's always trade-offs, right? We can't be all things to everyone at our company. So I think that's just a constant struggle. If anyone has like the silver bullet to not having that, and I think like, not for lack of effort, right? I think it's just a lot of conversations with the CEO and making sure that we're on the same page with, hey, I know that all of these things matter, but let's like really order these. What matters the most, and what do we both agree is going to really drive, remove the needle for our company? And that changes quarterly, monthly, definitely weekly and daily sometimes, but
Yeah.
life of a startup, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
I really like what you pointed to there. We could talk about how do you, if I was to ask you about how do you deal with the challenges around a lean team, but a list of 100 things to do. And the reason I'm not asking that now is because you answered with a really interesting point about, and maybe you were going here, maybe you weren't, but it seemed to me that you have embraced this idea of co-creating with leadership. So making leadership understanding of the fact that, we have a capacity issue. And so can we co-create this in terms of what is important now, what is most critical to the business growth at this stage versus what isn't? Has that been enough for you in terms of co-creating with C-suite, or is there anything else that you deal with that you rely on when that inner voice in your head is saying you're not enough, you should be doing these 10 other things? How do you handle that?
I think like just really being proactive in communicating with your peers in other functions, or the CEO, or kind of whoever you're surrounded with, and not in the sense of like, I always try to be really cognizant of like, oh, we just can't do that, or we can't do, it's like you don't always want to say no, but I think it's helpful to provide context to the people that you're working with, so that they understand the trade-offs, and ultimately alignment is what's most important. I'm a big like, I just want the team to win.
Yeah.
And I'm not super concerned about like getting the credit or whatever. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're rowing in the same direction, for what we think is going to have the greatest impact for the
Right.
company. And I think just being proactive, like I think it's an easy path to, or like, trap sort of, to just kind of like do your own thing and like, hey, we're doing this, and I know like these are my KPIs, and hey, I'm just doing what is expected of me, or what someone said I should, the CEO said I should be doing, and I'm meeting my numbers. But then it becomes end of quarter or the first half of the year, based on what the time of year is right now, and you just don't want to be in that spot where it's like, whoa, like how did we missed the priorities. We weren't,
Right.
again, rowing in the same direction. I think it's easier to do that, especially at a smaller company, which is, something that
Okay.
I really like. I think it's easy to kind of be proactive, reach out to your peers, make sure that you're just communicating the trade-offs, what the priorities are.
Yeah.
And then when you're flying and just jumping on Zoom and having those conversations, super
Right.
important.
In a small sort of startup environment, what do you have access to in terms of resolving the capacity issue? Like I would imagine part of the reason why there's a capacity issue comes down to budget, right? But is it that, or is it role definition, or not understanding where else some people should fit? What options do you have in a lean startup scenario to eliminate a bit of that capacity constraint?
I think that, budget is always, it's like budget and resourcing. So like headcount and, actual dollars to put towards, agencies or contractors or freelancers or whatever, is always a constraint. And I would say generally, like in a startup environment, that's often, at least from my perspective, like the biggest constraint. And then, but I think you bring up a really good point about sometimes it's like role definition too, and not even within marketing, but I think about like maybe you're working with maybe the CS team has more capacity and they end up doing more of the customer marketing, and you're just kind of enabling them, but they own it. Right. Or in our company right now, we have also a really small product team.
Right.
And kind of tag team product marketing, and we work together. And I think that's always like a gray area too. It's like, oh, should product own this or should marketing own this? And that goes back to those like conversations, just being really proactive with reaching out to your counterparts and not, making the assumptions like, well, that's not my thing or that's their thing or whatever, and just surfacing it and just, hey, like we have to do it. We got to figure it out. And let's not get super hung up on whose job it is, like whose purview does it fall into, and just like, we got to get it done and let's figure out how we can work together to make it happen.
Yeah. I think that constraint around things like budget and resources give us the opportunity to explore creatively how can this function satisfy the business growth goals without, just access to a bunch of headcount, which can make us lazy sometimes if we have all the unlimited resources, right?
Yeah.
For you, what would you claim to be your superpower as a marketing leader? Something that you feel very comfortable with and confident in terms of like, this is how I'm going to show up because it's old hat to me.
Yeah. I think if I were to really reflect, I think starting like building something like just scrappiness a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because, I'm 5'2", and I was, when I was a point guard, you had to I'm always the shortest. So I just have to be scrappy. But I think starting things like you have a few ingredients and, on the shelf or in the refrigerator, you have like good pieces, and then figuring out how to put people with great skills. And you have like, hey, we have great content, we have a great product, we have great customers, all of these things. How can we start a marketing function?
Right.
So I've enjoyed that. I think that the times where I've had the opportunity to do that, it's gone well. But I think really it's just like I tend to index for just getting shit done.
Love it.
That's probably the superpower. It's not really superpower. It's just like
grit.
Doing it, just doing the work. And I think that can also be like, sometimes a weakness too, sometimes where it's easy to optimize for, we're just getting shit done and we're just plowing through the list. And when you're a small team and you're the leader of that small team, who you're like player coach sometimes, where you're responsible for strategy and execution, it can be easy, right? Like I have all these pieces, like my checklist, it's just easy to get into checklist mode of like, we just got to do this stuff.
Right. Which
I tend to be like really good at. But it's super important that I don't let that like overconsume my attention,
Totally. I think that when we're in that checklist mentality, it gives you a bit of a dopamine hit every time you knock something off. And so then inevitably what you end up doing is just adding more shit to the list. Yeah. As compared to doing less things and more impact. But
for sure.
So you kind of alluded to it there. What do you feel, and I guess are willing to admit is a gap area for you as a marketing leader? Something that you want to improve on, but you just are you comfortable enough sharing that Just
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the biggest, that is a big one for me, that I think I get into, I think maybe that mentality, maybe too often, of like, we're just plowing through. And it is, some of that stuff is like, there's no one else to do it, right? There's two people. But I think being more intentional with carving out time to be more reflective, right? So taking the time, it's not my favorite thing for sure. Like doing data analysis is not it is not my superpower. So I think it's something that I have to like really, I always like when I'm in it, it's super interesting, right? I always enjoy like getting the insights, but really like, all right, I gotta, pause and take the time to dig into some of this stuff. So being reflective, I think, can be a weakness. And then just carving, like being really intentional to carving out the time to be strategic and thinking beyond, next quarter,
right.
or in which, again, in a startup environment, we don't always have that luxury because things are shifting constantly. So sometimes it's like, gosh, even thinking about 2 quarters ahead, who knows what things will be like, even in 2 months. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I don't know if that answers the
no,
question.
that's totally. It's a constant struggle, is understanding how much time should we spend in the clouds, reflecting, thinking about the future. How much time should we be toggling back to the dirt, the here
Yeah,
and now,
yeah, it's a
and
good way to put it.
and I think your team, as even though it's lean, but as it grows, they'll be looking to you for that guidance and that leadership. What's important now, but not losing track of what is on the horizon as well. I
For
think that.
sure.
Um, Tell me a little bit about when we first chatted. You talked about something that's been really close to kind of, I guess, the main part of your strategy, which is this idea of selling without selling, or creating attraction and engagement around maybe the problems you solve, or the things that add value within those problems, less so much the actual bits and bytes of what you do. Talk to me about that approach.
Yeah. So something that's just been really effective in my current role and even in a past role, but we're like really into it right now, is getting to talk, again, my company's, uConnect, right? Getting to talk about the uConnect point of view
Yeah,
without ever talking about uConnect
yeah,
explicitly, right? So I think that has something to do with the fact that we're in, we have no direct competitors, category creation, if you will. So I think that's important, but we really lean into content really heavily and providing a lot of value to our customer base. And that's not anything, necessarily new or novel for sure. But it allows us to, again, talk about our company point of view in a way that doesn't feel like we're talking about the company point of view.
yeah,
And it allows us to really like just highlight problems that people know they face every single day, but they don't even know, like, it's one of those problems they don't realize it's a solution, that there's a solution exists. So yeah, I think just content has very much become the pillar of our entire
yeah.
marketing strategy, and that trickles down even to like how we support our CS team with customers and how we're supporting our sales team in their work with prospects.
Yeah.
Kind of like this, yeah, this content first, really.
No, I love it. It's a good reminder that, something that we often forget, but people aren't buying products or services. They're buying some sort of transformation from a non-ideal before state to an ideal after state. And when you talk about sales enablement, essentially what you're doing is you're creating a feeling amongst your target market of, these people understand the nuance about what I'm feeling and perhaps haven't verbalized. And so I'm going to have a conversation because there's an understanding there. And you're kind of systematically, you're not cloak and daggering anybody, but you're creating tension,
Yeah,
is what a sales team needs. Is there needs to be tension created, right? Otherwise the alleviation of that is meaningless and
yeah,
not valuable.
yeah, definitely. And I think when you can approach it from, when people feel like they're constantly getting value from you, it's like it's like pretty basic and common sense. You want them to keep coming back, right? You want them to have like, hey, I read this article and there was no mention of their company or feature or product or feature or benefit, and I got so much value, and they demonstrated they really care about my industry, work that we're doing, and now I'm going to subscribe to their newsletter. And right, it's like all of these, it's like a collection of moments. And the more that you do that, obviously they're familiar, they continue to engage with you. And for us, it's been like we get them on our website, right? So we just continue to provide a lot of value. And now they become more curious, and now they're poking around on the product section. Now they're watching a virtual demo, and now they're filling out a form to meet with a sales rep. So it's a bit of the long game sometimes, it feels like, but that's, in a perfect world, obviously someone's reading something and they're raising their hand immediately to talk to sales. But I think we all know like that doesn't always, it's very infrequent, at least in our industry, for it to happen that way.
Yeah. So it's a big one because, well, it definitely requires the support of leadership, because in this attribution focused world, and there needs to be some buy-in and grace, I think, provided, and a shared understanding of what the strategy is. So without direct attribution and immediate return on investment, how do you know personally if you and your team are doing a good job on a day-to-day basis? Like, what do you rely on in your gut, or maybe some form of reporting that allows you to know that, dang, I did a good job today, or not?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think it's both, right? Like,
Yeah.
gut, you just have, you feel it and you know it. You know that it's working, or it's the right thing, but you got to be able to show it too. And sometimes it can be harder to show that. So you have to find what are the maybe leading indicators that help show we're onto something.
Right.
And so for us, when we rolled out our new kind of our content strategy, I guess it'd be the end of 2022, we wanted to track for all of 2023. We looked at like website traffic, podcast downloads, and LinkedIn engagement.
Okay.
So those were just 3 metrics that we tracked every single month. And we could see like, hey, okay, it's going up and to the right. That's usually a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of okay, we're picking up steam, right?
Yeah.
And then you get some of the anecdotal feedback, which is, anecdotes are important pieces of data too. So listening to gong calls, or looking for snippets in gong calls, getting feedback from our AEs, and hearing like, hey, they're referencing the podcast a lot, or they love the newsletter. Hearing from customers. We added the form on our demo request page, like, how did you hear about us?
Yeah.
For some, self-reported attribution,
Yeah.
Which is great, right? So now we're seeing, how did you hear about uConnect, LinkedIn, podcast, newsletter. So all of those things combined, gave us a high degree of confidence that we're on the right path, and helped leadership, right? Because like, definitely kudos to our CEO. We really kind of jumped in, and it's not always the easiest thing to track. But I'm lucky to work for a CEO who generally understands and appreciates marketing, beyond just, like I said, lives outside of a spreadsheet.
Right.
So that was great. And it's continued to grow over the last year and a half now. So more to come though.
You talked about the anecdotal feedback from the sales team. Obviously, if there's synergy between those two functions, CEO is naturally going to enjoy that and like that and value it. What methods or infrastructure or cadence or routines or rituals do you establish with the sales team to create that sort of cyclical, seamless sort of, this is working, this isn't? Because I'm interested in this idea in terms of how you've been able to bridge the gap between those two functions. It sounds like it's a close-knit group. What have you been doing on purpose to facilitate that?
Yeah, we're definitely, I would say, lockstep, right? I always say like, we're not a sales-led org, we're not a market, we're just like, we're right there together. I I would love to tell you that I have some really great process for collecting feedback and it's, really seamless and cadenced, but it's not always, a lot of it lives in Slack and, in some, what am I trying to say? We're announcing a close one deal and the AEs putting in the notes,
Right.
They reference the podcast or they're coming back from a conference and they're proactively sharing that with us, right? And I think that in itself is a signal that if the AEs are excited to tell the marketing team about what they're hearing in, real time from prospects about the work that marketing is doing, like that doesn't always happen. And so I think that in itself is a great kind of sense of feedback. But I think to get to answer your question, we have weekly pipeline syncs where we're talking about like here's what marketing is doing and we're getting live feedback from sales. I attend daily sales syncs with the AEs. So we really we're close and in many ways kind of operate as one group.
I love it. And I think it's a good reminder that we don't need all these super sophisticated attribution models and all these things. Sometimes it is just about organically having conversations and being lockstep and having a general sense of agreement on what role is each playing and what defines success. And that can be anecdotal information sharing. It doesn't need to be.
I want to say too, for sure, we're a small team, so we can, right? Like that's feasible. At a small, I of course, took a drink of something and it went down the wrong.
This is a casual podcast.
So that's a good timing for that, but we can do that because we have 3 AEs.
Right.
So we can have that super tight feedback loop and we can collaborate constantly. And so I definitely appreciate the larger the org, that becomes more challenging. And I think that's part of the reason I love and really thrive like in this small, scrappy environment, because I like building those types of relationships with, counterparts across the org.
Yeah. And how's growth going? Do you anticipate sometime on the horizon that you'll want to maintain some of that small team scrappiness nature, but is there going to be a need to evolve over time? Like how is growth?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think for our org, we have definitely revenue goals that we want to hit in 2024, which will hopefully open up, opportunity to grow different teams in 2025. And I think that will be, the next kind of challenge is like when you're small and there are so many areas you could invest in terms of headcount and resources.
Yeah.
Making sure like we get one shot at we get a position where are we going to put this person? What are they going to focus on that can have the greatest impact for the team? Because we don't have the luxury of, having super specialized people in all of these different functions. So I think that's CBD. We have a lot of work to do this year to make sure that we can set ourselves up for that and for next year. But it's cool to be able to say that as I look back, even just from 2023, the marketing work that we did led to, 40% increase in discovery calls across the board for our sales team. So if we can continue to see trends like that, I think, it's an easier story to tell to, head of finance and CEO when you think about how do we resource the company in terms of pipeline generation. Is it SDRs or BDRs? Is it, marketing headcount? Is an AE? Just lots of different ways to think about how to grow revenue in terms of resourcing. I think the quick, I think it's easy for revenue leaders to quickly think like, hey, we got to grow. We want to grow. We need another AE. And I think we've put ourselves in a good position where we can tell the story like, hey, you should invest in marketing, because now we can provide more higher quality, ideally qualified opportunities and contacts to get in front of the AEs that we already have. So
totally. Yeah, you're totally speaking my language about, the way you're describing this is so rooted in a business case. It's like you're looking at it from the perspective of the CFO and CEO, and it's not, well, we need a head count because we want to do these 8 more things. It's first, all you talked about there in the last 20 seconds was around the business case, and the business case being validated to a point which suggests that the next obvious thing is to double down on those things that are fulfilling the business case, which is the right conversation to have. I'm on this like lifelong journey, career-long journey to start to eradicate the cost center definition of a marketing system, because it's a growth center. It's an area of predictable and profitable investment, right? But you can't have those conversations if it's not nested in the perspectives of a CFO and a CEO.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you just said is like spot on. It can't be, we want to start a community, like we want to do this thing because I read about it on LinkedIn and everyone's doing it. And like, that's the thing. It all has to be, again, rooted in what's going to drive the greatest impact for the company. I'm with it. Good luck with that.
That's right. Well, you got to join my army because you're natural.
Yeah. I'll be a soldier.
Yeah. Let's dream for a little bit here. Like if taking out the obvious constraints of budget and things like that, what is one or two areas of your mix, your marketing mix, that you just wish was industry leading? Maybe it's non-existent now, maybe it's existent but on life support. Where just wave the magic wand.
Like magic wand, what would we add industry leading?
Yeah, within your marketing mix, it could be like an amazing SEO program or amazing email.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those things. It's right there, and I know it's right there, but we just aren't in the situation to go after it. It would be paid advertising, right? LinkedIn specifically. We work with career services leaders who they're teaching students how to be on LinkedIn. So we know they're on LinkedIn, right? Like, or at least we would assume if they're coaching students about this. So they're right there. And we have a great organic LinkedIn presence. And I think having a killer digital, spend program with LinkedIn in particular that's just really robust and well thought out and can think about different pieces of content, targeting different areas of the sales pipeline, customer journey could be a game changer.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like I know and I have a lot of conviction about.
Yeah.
But again, like we're two people, and I also can raise my hand and say like I'm not I don't have that firsthand expertise to execute against. And I think that's like an important thing. I don't, when resources are super limited and budget is tight, like I'm not going to say, hey, give me the 50 grand and I'll, whatever it is. Right. Yeah. And I'll make it happen. We got to be diligent with the spend, and
it seems like you're already predisposed to not just saying, hey, mom, dad, can I have some money? But it's like, this is what I'd like, and here's my expected outcome. I think that, that'll for sure happen. There was a question left for you by a previous guest. And if you don't mind, right after that, I'd love you to leave a question for my next guest. Again, all of our guests are in the same world, right? It's we're leading the marketing function for an established organization. We have proof of market, but we're lean and we're mean and this type of thing. So the question that was left for you is, in those quiet times, what do you rely on when the noise is unbearable in terms of you're not the right marketing leader, you're not good enough, you're doing this wrong, you should be doing XYZ when you're doing ABC, you're this, you're that. Like, do you rely on anything? This is when you're by yourself in those quiet times.
Yeah, I mean, because that definitely, I don't know that I haven't met anyone who's exempt from having those, or who haven't had those types of thoughts or feelings. I think it's like you just have to be, I'm definitely the first to raise my hand when things, hey, I'm like, this isn't going as well as I thought, or I missed the mark here or whatever. But I think there's a lot of successes, and I think it's super important to go back to those successes, and maybe that gives you like the little bit of pep that you need in your step, just to keep persevering. I think especially when you're feeling overwhelmed, right? There's like a million things to do, or marketing is under a microscope, or there's a board meeting coming up, or whatever. I think there's like, just go back to the successes. I think keep track of those. I think even just like taking screenshots of kudos that you've gotten, or wins that your team has had. I think those are just really, really important.
Yeah. Just build a little binder of them and flip through them when you're having those tough ones.
Yeah, for sure. I think that can help for anyone, really.
What are you curious about asking next guest?
I alluded to this a bit earlier, around like hiring, right? So as I think about growing my team, it's just like, right? It's like the question you ask. I would love for your next guest to answer the question, like, how do you think about hiring for your next role? Like, what goes into making the decision for how to resource your team, when you're, assuming they're, again, somewhat similar to me, lean team, but established company that's growing. I would be very curious, like what inputs you're looking at when it feels like everything could probably use a bit of attention.
Right. I won't answer it now. I have an opinion, but I'll save that for the next guest.
Yeah, I will be sure to listen, because I am eager for sure to hear what they have to say.
Any questions for me, marketing leader to marketing leader? Different circumstances.
Well, I was going to say, like, now I want to know your opinion on that question. Can I ask that?
Yeah, sure. I think like any good lawyer would tell you, it depends. And there's, I guess, an opinion versus advice. I believe that when you have a team, regardless of what size they are, and all of them intimately understand the business case that you as a collective are meant to fulfill, it's making the decision around who to hire and what role for them to play, make it a group-based conversation, and don't ignore the perspectives of, as long as everyone's in line with the same thing, like we're all understand what the business case is and we're all going in direction. It's amazing how many bias or beliefs we have individually in terms of what role needs to be played from 10,000 feet. But if we ignore the perspectives of those that play a different role along the customer value journey, we're getting like a bit of it. And then ultimately, people support what they help create. And so if you have two team members and they say, here's the case for why we need X, and then if you act on that, they're going to support what they help create, meaning they're going to play their role in helping them be successful and playing their role in association with them. I think it's democratized the decision and the discussion around it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great advice. And I think it definitely makes sense that, when people feel like they're a part of a decision, they're just going to have more buy-in. And now they're, bought in on helping this person be successful.
It's very easy to disagree with Ashley. It's very hard to disagree with Caleb if I had it with yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Bad example, but you know what I mean? That's why when you talked earlier about co-creating certain understanding or alignment to the marketing strategy with the CEO, they have a small hand in creating what will be. And so they're going to be the last person to criticize what you do. Anyways, well, I'll get another perspective from my next guest, but thank you so much. My guest, Ashley Safranski at uConnect. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Caleb. It was fun.
Awesome.